All right, welcome again, everyone. Dustin, can we greet those who are on Zoom today? We can wave at them. There they are. A lot of people. Okay, if there is anyone here for the first time and is willing to introduce yourself, please raise your hand and someone will bring a microphone to you and you can tell us who you are and what brought you here. So we have one right up here, Leslie in the black. Did you raise your hand? Oh, okay. I thought you raised your hand, sorry.
I saw you yesterday.
Okay, here we go.
We read some of the pamphlets of yesterday, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty impressed with my wife. We got here, we didn't leave in time, I guess. I'm not going to tell you any stories, but we got here, and I'm Lee Parody, by the way. This is my wife, Judy.
Welcome, Lee and Judy.
It was your anniversary yesterday. They spent it with us.
What turned me to come here, it is so different than the other place that I had to go, and I just think it's good to be here. Thank you.
Well, we are so happy you're here and happy with us. Anybody else wish to share? Over here.
I'm a new guy.
Hi, new guy. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Thomas Manners. I'm here in Florida for a undetermined amount of time. I've been living the last 30 years in the Southwest. I'm a semi-retired truck driver.
Oh.
And I'm glad to be here.
I get it.
That's Rascal Dog. That's my companion. She's kind of antisocial. She just likes me, so don't mind her.
Well, we're glad you're both here.
Yeah, Rascal likes you if you have dog smells on your shoes. But yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, we gratefully acknowledge that we are, oh.
She wants to.
Okay.
I know, she's doing things.
That's okay. We don't mind you changing your mind.
I'm so happy to be here. Since I retired 3 years ago, early retirement, thank you, that's a blessing. Looking for, maybe not sometimes a blessing, because I've been looking for a home, if you will, a spiritual home. Never found a home in organized religions. I found them unaccepting and uninclusive. So this was a find for me. I'm super excited. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning because I just couldn't sleep. I was so happy to be here with lovely people that won't judge and they have good and open hearts. I'm just over the moon about it.
Welcome, Leslie.
It's Leslie McLaren. No relation to the race.
So, all right. I'm glad the word is getting out about who we are, because we are different than a lot of churches. And thank goodness. I'm sorry. We gratefully acknowledge that we are stewards of the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples, whose ancestral homeland we humbly walk upon today. Let these thoughts about this land that we are honored to have carry us through as we worship together. All are welcome here this morning, and thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us. Okay, our opening words today are from 19th century American poet, philosopher, and leader of the Transcendentalist movement, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming." All right, Igor is going to help us light our chalice this morning. For the wonder and inspiration we seek from the sun and stars and all the lights of the heavens, we light this chalice. It is our practice to offer our joys or concerns each week with our stone ritual. If you wish to silently share a joy or concern, please make your way to the station either in the front or in the back to place your stone or stones in the sand as Pete plays his Native American flute. And Terry. Oh, we're going to have a duet. you. This is American Sign Language applause, by the way. Is there anyone that wishes to share a joy or concern aloud? Wait for a microphone, please.
I just heard from Phyllis Gillette a little while ago that she talked to Judy Havens a couple of last night, night before. Judy's not doing very well, so I don't know any more than that. I'm going to give her a call this afternoon. If you know Judy, maybe you might want to do that too, because she'd like to hear from you. She's concerned. We're missing her. She's not here. She'd love to be here, so I'm going to try to extend my thoughts to her.
You know if Judy is here or is she coming?
She's in Florida, though.
I just wanted to say, this is a joy. Yesterday's open house, I had the honor of being a tour guide. A lot of you know I was one of the first greeters years ago. And it was an honor to meet these people. And it's much more of an honor to see some of their faces today. And personally, I enjoyed your company so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a big joy.
Anyone else?
After reading the pamphlets we took home, I realized not as much as a religion, but I had opportunities to meet what you folks do. I became a handicap program manager for a big shipyard with 13,000 employees. And I had to find ways of keeping people with disabilities to work and legitimately. And it gave me a lot of good feeling. For one thing, I had no limit on my budget. I spent hundreds of thousands on people just to get what they needed, but because it was reasonable, the law said if the cost of the reasonable accommodation will prevent you from committing your business, then it's not reasonable. And I was in the Department of Defense, and I had an unlimited budget. So it was great, wonderful feelings to make sure. I also went out and I looked at people who were mentally incapable of doing a lot of things and found out things they could do. So I provided work for them. And this is another extension. When I retired, I had to wait 7 years for my wife to retire. I drove a little bus for Head Start. Picked up the parent and the 3-year-old and younger kids and took them to the school and the program. Well, it was so much fun, I did it 11 years. It's so nice to be here with you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a couple. Okay. Well, kind of piggybacking on what Susie had to say, I want to thank everybody that came and worked yesterday. To me, it was just a wonderful event in many ways. It brought us new friends, but it also got us to know each other in a way that we haven't taken the time to do. And I just thought it was a lot of fun. I like having fun in this church.
Oh, the magic trick.
The magic guy was good. The magic guy was good. And that was courtesy of Lois Sanford.
Oh.
She knew him and she insisted when we started planning that event that he be part of that event. She paid for him. So it's a great way to remember her. This is something she wanted to have happen, and so that got fulfilled yesterday. I think that's really great. I also want to give you an update on the Rossies. I've talked to them recently, and Jenna is doing better from her fall, and Ernie is home from his surgery and recovering, and they're hoping that pretty soon they'll be back to church. So we would love to see them back again. And my other joy is that we now have a new person who's chairing the Care and Concern Committee. So we're going to want to have everybody giving information to her, and that's Dawn Reed. Dawn, would you stand up? So everybody. Dawn has graciously agreed to do this, and she has wonderful background for doing it. She's got a social work background and worked in healthcare a lot. So we're very, very fortunate to have her. And we will be putting things in the paper, the bulletin and the communicator about how to access her, what kinds of information to give her. And she's got a sign-up sheet out there already for people who might be willing to help if someone needed meals for a day or two after hospitalization or a loss or something of that sort. So she's already starting to coordinate. We're really pleased. The other thing with regard to the event yesterday, to the open house, we are hoping to have some kind of follow-up with that on April 9th discussion. At the 9:30 discussion, we're going to be looking at the aspects of the initiative that's been going on now for about a year. And this was one of the major events for that. And so it would be so helpful for those of you who volunteered or those of you who came for the first time to come to that discussion and have your input, because we want to use yesterday's event to look at what worked, what didn't work, and what were the lessons learned, so we can make maximum benefit out of all the hard work that everybody did. So that would be April 9th.
9:30 is our discussion group in the social hall every Sunday. And this one is on that topic, April 9th.
And it's Easter, we could have peeps or chocolate bunnies or something. We could do Easter. Okay.
And bag clips.
We have bag clips. We have a lot of bag clips. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If there is anyone who was not mentioned that you hold concern for, you feel free to name them aloud at this time. Yeah. Jean. For all those things named, and for those that are too tender to speak, we collectively hold them in the light of our compassion and the warmth of our community. Our meditation today will actually last 5 minutes instead of the usual 1 minute, and we will be doing some Tai Chi. You can sit and just meditate with your eyes closed if you wish. You can watch other people's Tai Chi movements. You can stand up, do it at your seat, do it in your seat or in the aisles. So go to where you want to go and follow along and enjoy. Let us reaffirm who we are by reciting our congregational covenant together. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service we live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our interlude today is a 2010 introduction by Dr. Barry Andrews, a UU minister and scholar on the Transcendental movement. This is his introduction to a book he edited of the writings of Margaret Fuller that was published at the time of her bicentennial. The video is a bit choppy as it moves from section to section, but we hope it gives you an appreciation of one of our Transcendentalist forebears, Margaret Fuller.
And many other close friends. And it could be said that she applied her Transcendentalist ideals to an active engagement with social change here in America and political revolution abroad. There are few readers today who are familiar with her writings, even her groundbreaking feminist manifesto, Woman in the 19th Century. But her work set the stage for women's liberation and shaped the tastes of the American public for art, music, and literature. In many respects, we have yet to catch up to her radical views on women, culture, and religion. They remain provocative and far-reaching even today. Margaret Fuller was nothing if not aspiring. In everything she applied herself to, writing, editing, education, social reform, and her own self-creation, she aspired to grow and develop. This is what she wanted for herself, for others, for literature and art, and for her country. Extraordinary generous seeking, a phrase taken from the writings of Goethe, her literary hero, was her chosen motto. As we celebrate the bicentennial of this remarkable person, we might pause to reflect not only on her many contributions to the life and thought of her own time, but also to consider the ways in which we might still find inspiration and guidance in her legacy today. Fuller shared in the spirituality of the Transcendentalists. Like Emerson, Thoreau, and the others, she was a religious seeker of the spiritual left. But she carried that viewpoint into a wider sphere of engagement and application than many of her Transcendentalist contemporaries. These causes included women's rights, the plight of Native Americans, immigrants, and the poor in America, and political revolution abroad. Like her, we might consider the ways in which our own spirituality, which owes so much to the Transcendentalists in our movement, might inform and influence our actions today. There's no better place to begin than reading and reflecting on the thoughts of Margaret Fuller.
It is our practice at UU CLC to give generously to our church as we are able, and keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. Fellow Unitarian and Transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson also said, "Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you, and to give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude. If this congregation is one of the good things for which you are grateful, please, if you are able, give of your time, talents, and treasure to make it available to others." So there is a black box in the narthex in which you can place any contributions that you wish to give. Our first hymn will be in the gray hymnal. There are some under the seats around you, perhaps, and the words will be on the screen. We will be singing 3 verses of The Sun at High Noon, hymn 14. Stand as comfortable to sing. She's going to play the whole thing. 14.
The sun at high noon, the stars in dark space, the light of the moon on each shepherd's face, the cyclones and rain clouds that once followed high, we gaze up in wonder above to the sky. The green grass in plain, the grasshopper's sound, the creatures of shade that live in the ground, the dark soil where plants spring to birth, we look down and wonder below in the earth. The glad joys that heal the tears in our eyes, the longings we feel, the light of surprise, our night dreams, our daydreams, our hearts ranging wide, we live with a whole world of wonder inside.
I was raised an evangelical Christian. There's much of that tradition I have rejected. I no longer believe the Bible is a book different from other books with words more holy and special than the Hindu Vedas or the Tao Te Ching, or a piece of modern poetry or a novel by Dickens. I no longer believe that Jesus was born of a virgin and that a star led Magi to the place of his birth. But I have not given up all that faith tradition of my youth taught me. I was taught to listen to my own heart. I was taught that I could hear Jesus or God or something sacred and holy there. That idea I have not given up. As I was writing this, I thought of an old Sunday school song I was taught back then. It was, "I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart to stay." It had other verses. I've got the peace that passeth understanding, etc. I looked up the song on Google, and Wikipedia told me that the song was written by George Willis Cook, Unitarian minister, writer and editor, well known for his landmark history of the Unitarian movement in the 19th century and for his work on Transcendentalist writers and publications. I did not know I was being influenced by Unitarians, even in my childhood. One of our 19th century Transcendentalist Unitarian forebears, Theodore Parker, used to tell this story from his childhood. When he was not quite 4, he went with his father around the property of his family's farm. But as his father stopped to inspect a broken fence, a particular cow, a particular sheep, another particular sheep, young Theodore got bored. He asked his father if he could please go back to the house. Now the house was a long way off, but the not quite 4 Theodore stood tall and said he knew his way back. He was big enough. His father smiled and let him go. Now Theodore, in his boredom watching his father, had picked up a stick, as young boys will do. He had been swinging it, drawing in the dirt with it, sword fighting with it. He still had it with him when he headed back to the house. On his way home, something caught his eye as he passed the pond. It was a little striped turtle sitting on a rock enjoying the sun. Theodore crept up on the turtle, raising his stick high over his head, preparing to bring it down on the small turtle as he had seen some other boys hit small animals. But then he heard a voice saying, "It's wrong." He heard it again, "Wrong." He looked around. He didn't see his father or his mother. He didn't see any of his 10 older brothers or sisters. He didn't see any of his neighbors. Young Theodore dropped his stick. The turtle crawled safely into the pond, and Theodore ran the rest of the way home and into his mother's arms. He told her about the stick and the turtle and the voice. He asked her who that voice was. His mother told him that some people called it conscience, but that she called it the voice of God. She told the young Theodore that if he listened to it, it would become clearer and clearer all through his life, like the tolling of a bell. But if he stopped listening to it, it would grow quieter and quieter until he would not be able to hear it at all. Now, this experience obviously remained with Theodore Parker throughout his life, for it is only through his telling of the story in his adult ministry that we know of it. Both Parker in his adulthood and I in mine continue to believe the voice of the holy can speak to us from within. A number of our Transcendentalist ancestors described such experiences. Ralph Waldo Emerson, standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I seem all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part and parcel of God. Margaret Fuller, I saw there was no self, that selfishness was all folly and the result of circumstance, that it was only because I thought the self real that I suffered, that I had only to live in the idea of the all, and the all was mine. This truth came to me, and I received it unhesitatingly, so that I was, for that hour, taken up into God. Henry David Thoreau. I can remember how I was astonished. I said to myself, I said to others, there comes into my mind such an indescribable, infinite, all-absorbing, divine, heavenly pleasure, a sense of elevation and expansion, and I have naught to do with it. I perceive that I am dealt with by superior powers. This is a pleasure, a joy, an existence which I have not procured myself. I speak as a witness on the stand and tell what I have perceived. Dr. Barry Andrews, who we heard earlier speak of Margaret Fuller and the collection of her writings he edited, wrote an essay a number of years ago titled The Roots of Unitarian Universalist Spirituality in New England Transcendentalism. In the essay, Andrews writes, in many respects, Transcendentalism was a generational revolt from Unitarianism, which itself had split off from Calvinism only a generation before. The liberals had broken with Calvinists on largely rational grounds, and now the Transcendentalists were protesting a lack of religious feeling and enthusiasm among the Unitarians because of an exaggerated rationalism. As Theodore Parker expressed it, I felt early that the liberal ministers did not do justice to simple religious feeling. To all, their preaching seemed to relate too much to outward things, not enough to the inward pious life. Most powerfully preaching to the understanding, the conscience, and the will, the cry was ever duty, duty, work, work. They failed to address with equal power the soul, and did not also shout, joy, joy, delight, delight. As Emerson declared in the opening sentences of his Transcendentalist manifesto, Nature, the foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face, we through their eyes. Why should we not also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should we not have poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Now, the Transcendentalists did not just wait for such insight or revelation to come to them. They prepared themselves to receive it by a variety of spiritual practices. Just taking time to be in nature was one of those spiritual practices. Andrews writes, first and foremost, they looked to nature as a source of revelations concerning the spiritual life. Thoreau, who of the group came closest to being a nature mystic, noted characteristically in his journal, my profession is always to be on the alert to find God in nature, to know God's lurking places, to attend all the oratorios, the operas in nature, to watch for, describe all the divine features which I detect in nature. Emerson also looked to nature for spiritual insight and moral instruction. As he observed in one of his lectures on human culture, go and hear in a woodland valley the harmless roarings of the south wind, and see the shining boughs of the trees in the sun, the swift sailing clouds, and you shall think a person is a fool to be mean and unhappy when every day is made illustrious by these splendid shows. Then falls the enchanting night. All the trees are wind harps. Outshine the stars, and we say, blessed be light and darkness, ebb and flow, cold and heat, these restless pulsations of nature which throb for us. In the presence of nature, a person of feeling is not suffered to lose sight of the instant creation. The world was not made a great while ago. Nature is an eternal now. The Transcendentalists also took time to be quiet and simply contemplate. Andrews writes that the 2 years Thoreau spent at Walden Pond were an especially contemplative time for him, and he describes one of his mornings there in the following manner. Sometimes in a summer morning, having taken my accustomed bath, I sit in my sunny doorway from sunrise till noon, wrapped in reverie amidst the pines and hickories and sumacs, in undisturbed solitude and stillness, while the birds sang around or flitted noiseless through the house, until the sun falling in at my west window or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. I grew in those seasons like the corn in the night, and they were far better than any work of the hands would have been. They were not time subtracted from my life, but so much over and above my usual allowance. I realized what the Eastern sages mean by contemplation and the forsaking of works. Contemplation was a spiritual discipline for Emerson as well. In his lectures on human culture, he offered this recommendation: in your arrangements for your residence, see that you have a chamber to yourself, though you sell your coat and wear a blanket. A silent stream of thoughts descend to us from above, and the spiritual seeker keeps one's religious eye turned to this upward light. The simple habit of sitting alone occasionally to explore what facts of moment lie in the memory may have the effect in some more favored hour to open to the student the kingdom of spiritual nature. One may become aware that every fact is magical, every atom alive, and one is the heir of it all. Being in nature, contemplation, reading itself was seen by the Transcendentalists as a spiritual discipline. To quote Andrews again, Emerson and Parker were known for their extensive libraries. Margaret Fuller was a discerning reader and book reviewer. Alcott and Thoreau compiled lengthy lists of the books they had read. Mostly they read for spiritual insights, or lusters as Emerson called them. Again, Thoreau speaks for himself and the others when he writes, "How many a person has dated a new era in one's life from the reading of a book. The book exists for us perchance, which will explain our miracles and reveal new ones." The Transcendentalists' reading included poetry, philosophy, mythology, history, science, and biography. They were especially attracted to the sacred texts of other religious traditions, including those of India and China. In the Dial, a Transcendentalist publication edited by Fuller and Emerson, there was a column devoted to ethical scriptures from the world's religions. They were inspired by these and found that they confirmed the truths of their own spiritual views, because they felt the universal spirit present in all times and places. They looked for and discovered evidence of it in all religious faiths. Writing, too, was a spiritual practice for the Transcendentalists. Andrews says most of them kept a journal or diary. Emerson, Thoreau, and Alcott are especially noted for having kept journals. Certainly the best of Alcott is in his journal, and many people feel the same about Thoreau. Emerson began writing his journal at the age of 17 when he was a student at Harvard, and it was with Emerson's encouragement that Thoreau began his own journal in 1837. Now I have to admit, that I have not been very good at journal keeping. I have tried it a few times and don't usually last very long at trying it. But I know for some people, it is indeed a wonderful spiritual practice. Emerson recommended it in his lectures on human culture. Pay so much honor to the visits of truth in your mind as to record those thoughts that have shone therein. It is not for what is recorded, but for the habit of rendering account to yourself, of yourself, in some more rigorous manner and at more certain intervals than mere conversation or casual reverie or solitude require. Bronson Alcott was better at journal keeping than I have ever been. He kept his journal for over 50 years, amounting to approximately 5 million words. The last of the spiritual practices of the Transcendentalists has been easier for me than journaling. It is conversation. I find that speaking with others of you about topics of faith has helped me to clarify my own thoughts and to put into words my own feelings. Andrews writes, Alcott rejected traditional instructional teaching methods in favor of conversations as a pedagogical tool. He describes his views in the following journal entry. My theory of conversation as the natural organ of communicating mind with mind appears more and more beautiful to me. It is the method of human culture. By it I come nearer the hearts of those whom I shall address than by any other means. I reach the facts of the case. I am placed thereby in the simplest relations. There is nothing arbitrary, nothing presuming. Conversation must be my organ of address to the public mind. Margaret Fuller led conversations, primarily with groups of women, as a means of producing income and promoting self-culture. For a period of 5 years, Fuller conducted conversations on such topics as mythology, education, women's issues, and universal religious ideas. Typically, between 25 and 30 women subscribed to these sessions. Fuller would begin each one with a brief introduction, invite questions, and ask a few questions herself as a means of drawing the others out in a discussion of the subject. Andrews writes, these spiritual disciplines, excursions in nature, contemplation, reading, journal writing, and conversations, represented the means of cultivating the self or soul. But in keeping with the doctrine of self-culture, these means were never ends in themselves. The Transcendentalists believed that spirituality required an outward manifestation of inward aspirations. In other words, the moral and the spiritual are necessarily interrelated. Think back to Parker's story of the voice he heard at not quite 4. Accordingly, the Transcendentalists sought to achieve a congruence between spiritual insights and ethical actions in all areas of their lives. This was most notable in their experiments in simple living and their involvements in social and religious reforms. Accordingly, the Transcendentalists were singly and as a group more active in social and political reforms than their Unitarian opponents and critics. The ethical consequences of the Transcendentalist ideals impelled them into a wide variety of causes and reforms. The educational reforms of Bronson Alcott and Elizabeth Peabody, the Christian socialism of William Henry Channing, Margaret Fuller's feminism and involvement in the Roman Revolution of 1848, Thoreau's civil disobedience, George Ripley's Brook Farm, abolitionism, and women's rights. These were not accidents or deviations, but logical consequences of the Transcendentalist social ethic. They were the inevitable outcome of a belief in a common human nature and the desire to integrate spiritual aspirations and moral behavior. Transcendentalism, for all its emphasis on spirituality, led its adherents into the world more often than away from it. Our transcendentalist forebears, like us all, had their faults, but they still have much to teach us. I believe that in developing our own spiritual practices, we, like they, will find that we are led into, not away from the world, and we will continue the Unitarian Universalist heritage they left to us of spirituality that leads to social justice. I was raised.
Our next hymn is in the Gray Book also, hymn 343. We will be singing, Terry will play it through entirely, and then we will sing 3 verses, not 4. Verse 3. My rise is willing and able. Harvest and a planet, a crystal and crystal, a swordfish and a saurian, and caves where angels dwell. The sense of awe and beauty, a basin in the sun, revolution, and others call it God. On the far horizon, the infant in the sky, the white rich tints of cornfields and wild geese sailing by, and over high and lowland, the charm of golden rod. Some people call it autumn, and others call it God. Like tides on Cynthia, and moons on into our hearts high yearnings, come welling, surging in. Come from the mystic ocean, whose rim unfurled and star. Some people call it longing, and others call it God. Wow, that's a good one. It's the first time we have sung that, I believe, and that was beautiful. Oh, okay. Our closing words today are by 19th century American Transcendentalist and Unitarian minister Theodore Parker. He said, "Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living." As we extinguish our chalice, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise as comfortable and say the words on the screen together. And Then after that, we will sing Weave, and we will do that by sending our loving energy to our neighbors without touching, and sing Weave together, and then enjoy refreshments in the social hall after. So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So wait a minute, Terry. Terry, just they have to have time to switch cameras. So I know. Yes, we did used to hold hands and do this. So this is what we're doing post-COVID, and hopefully it's really post. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together. Weave us together. Together in love. Woo! Join us in the social hall.